Hey everybody, it is late at night and I am Norman. Tonight I want to talk to you about something that has occurred in regards to my collection that has me a bit nervous. Alright, so in this video I'm just talking to you all. I kind of miss doing my podcasts where that's what I do. I just sit there and talk, no real script or anything. So this is a pretty unscripted video. As most of you know, I'm actually saving for a goal watch, and I'm still doing that. And currently that goal watch is the Oyster Perpetual, but we'll see what happens. I find that the longer I save for a watch, the more difficult it becomes. My family attributes that to an instant gratification deal, but I feel like it's actually something a bit different. It's doubt. The longer I save, the more I start to wonder, am I actually going to wear this watch enough to justify the crazy amounts of money I'm going to be spending on it? Yeah, and then I just start to wonder, maybe this actually isn't really my goal watch and maybe it'll just sit. For example, my most expensive watch, retail-wise, I've never really worn. I've worn it a few times here and there, but it has spent the majority of the time that I've had it just sitting in a watch box. And I did buy it brand new, but yeah. And that watch is the Nomos Orion. And I remember when I first got it, and I told this story in a previous video, I was absolutely in shock. So with Bauhaus-y watches with black dials like the Orion, you need to really scrutinize the images online. Because of course, they're going to photograph the watch so that you can see the hands and indices really clearly. The problem with that is they kind of look like the hands are white and the indices are white when they're actually chrome. That happened to me when I got an affordable black dial Bauhaus watch. In all the photographs, the markers and hands looked white, and when I got it just like the Orion, they were chrome. After I received it, I went back to those images, and sure enough, if you look very closely at the tip of one of the hands, you could see a reflection of the Rihat in it. I think it was the Rihat. But you could see a reflection at the very tip of the hand that gives it away as being chrome as opposed to white. So when I got the Orion, I had recently sold my Xeno Bauhaus winder, and that watch had actually painted white hands and white hour markers on it. Such a brilliant looking Bauhaus watch. The only problem is that watch was big, and having a cylindrical case and being 100% dial, it just looked fashion watch gigantic. And when I was looking at pictures of the Orion, it kind of had a similar aesthetic until I saw it in person. The hands and indicators just kind of vanish most of the time because they're chrome. But that isn't just it, the watch is still brilliant. But for some reason, I just don't wear it. So I have a pretty large collection, which means that there's a lot of watches that I rarely wear, but the Nomos falls into a category of watches where I just never ever wear them. And when I do force myself to put them on my wrist, it usually doesn't last more than maybe an hour if I'm lucky before I've taken the watch off and put something else on, because putting it on just kind of inspires me to want to wear a different watch, whether that's the Max Bill or the Polerouter or even the Museum. So the Nomos ends up going right back into the box. And I was thinking the other day, maybe it'd be good to just sell it off because it really just sits around and I don't wear it. So why keep it just because it's expensive, just because it's brilliant? Just because I love Nomos and Bauhaus watches? Maybe selling it is what I need to do. It's a difficult choice. It took me forever to decide to let go of the Stova Antia, but that watch also just sat in the watch box. I'm not sure what it is about Bauhaus watches. How is it that I absolutely love them, but never ever wear them? So I'm a bit terrified to sell the Nomos because it's such an expensive watch. I mean, that income would be great towards saving for a gold watch, but I hate selling expensive watches. It's terrifying. I'm always terrified that at higher price points, understandably, people are going to be more scrutinizing of the watch and more picky about its quality and this and that. And I'm just terrified of sending out a watch that someone purchased and they end up giving me a bad review because there's something they don't like about it or whatever. So I made sure that I had the original Nomos strap, the buckle for the Nomos, the box and stuff, and I put it on the time grapher. And it was not performing well. So I put it on there dial side up, and it was like a minute fast. To put that into perspective, my $30 Caravelle watch that I just got, that's vintage, is performing over twice as accurate as the Nomos, which is only a few years old, and happens to contain one of my favorite movements in it, the 7001. So I was thinking maybe it got magnetized, so I was going to demagnetize it, and I also started thinking maybe I'd be brave enough and open up the back and regulate it myself, because I really don't want to have to send it out for a servicing. Who knows how much that's going to cost? And I ended up stumbling upon a YouTube channel that I hadn't ever encountered before, and it's Watch Repair Tutorials. I think that's what it's called. I'll put a link to it in the description below, but I'm pretty sure it's Watch Repair Tutorials. And the videos are phenomenal. Instead of simply watching somebody repairing a watch and explaining to you what they're doing, which in itself is just brilliant and educational, these are full-blown educational videos. And he talks about things that I have never heard anywhere else. And one thing that he mentioned was the state that a watch movement must be in, the things that must be in place with a movement before you even consider trying to regulate it. Now, to my understanding, you want to have obviously a healthy movement. If there's something wrong with the movement, trying to regulate it is just going to cover that up, and you're going to end up damaging the movement by not addressing that. I was aware of that, but he went down a whole list of things. First off, you start off by trying to demagnetize it, because that's the easiest thing to do, the less intrusive thing to do. But then secondly, you want to look at how it performs on a time grapher, dial side up and dial side down. Because if it performs drastically different one to the other, it may be a case of different levels of oiling on the top and bottom jewels on the balance wheel, or damage to a point at the top or bottom of the balance wheel, right? So I put it on the time grapher, dial side down, and sure enough, it was absolutely spot on. So dial up, it's a minute fast. Dial down for a little while, the accuracy was 0. Like it was quartz watch type accuracy. So crazy. But then as it settled in, like 30 seconds in, it settled on just a few seconds fast. I mean, it was performing how I would have expected it, dial side up. And I swear at the time, I checked it with crown side up because I'm left-handed and that's how it would be resting on my wrist. And it was doing terribly at that angle also. I think it was 40 some seconds fast. But tonight, right before doing this video, I put it back on the time grapher, and it was doing amazing crown up, crown down, and dial side down. So I don't know what was going on earlier, but now it's performing great in positions that it would be in while you're wearing it. But I'm still way too nervous to sell a watch like this when it's performing so terribly dial side up. But that got me thinking, because I own quite a few mechanical watches, and you hear people talking about being able to afford to maintain your watches. Like, they warn about purchasing a luxury watch because can you really afford the upkeep on such a watch? And I feel like that isn't the problem. I feel like if you can scrape up enough money to purchase a luxury watch, you can probably scrape up enough money to have it serviced 5-10 years down the road. I feel like the real problem comes in my situation, where you own a lot of mechanical watches. So I own some cheap, garbagey mechanical watches that really aren't worth paying for servicing, like my vintage Paliots, where I paid maybe $100 for them. I do like my Caravelle enough to where I would probably send it out for servicing, even though I paid $30 for the watch. I'm really, really loving that watch and have been wearing it just a ton. But I also have the Zodiac Olympus Mystery Dial, which I love and would totally send that out for servicing. I put that on par with like the Pull Router, with my gold Wittenauer, maybe the Enocar, I don't know. That one's a little bit iffy, but the Olympus, the Wittenauer, the Pull Router are all kind of like top level vintage mechanical watches that I would absolutely send off for servicing. And in fact, the Pull Router, I'll be sending that thing out for servicing more frequently than I normally would. I'm thinking somewhere around every 5 years, I'm going to have that thing serviced. Other watches, I don't know, 5-10 years, somewhere around there. I'm a little bit more lax than some people are. I don't think I would do 5 years for even the Olympus or the Wittenauer. But when I do send the Olympus out initially, that could cost me up to $700 if there happens to be an issue with the cannon pinion, which apparently is a common thing with those watches. Fortunately, hopefully, after that initial servicing, it won't be so painful. Kind of like the Pull Router, it was pretty expensive for its first servicing as well, because it had an issue. That might have been the cannon pinion on that one as well. Oh, I think they had to snug it up a little bit, but not actually replace it. But that servicing ended up spendy as well. So you have a lot of watches, and at some point they're all going to need service because they're mechanical. So that cost really adds up quickly. And seeing the Nomos's performance, which is a contemporary, nice, fairly expensive watch, I suddenly became really nervous about all my other mechanical watches. So I've been thinking that I really need to ramp up my goal of being able to do basic servicing. That is a goal that I've had for a while, and I just figured I would slowly collect tools, slowly learn from watching videos and reading up old mechanical watch repair books and guides and stuff like that. And I've got a bunch of beater watches that don't work or just are kind of garbagey that I can practice on before I move on to watches that I really don't care a ton about, but I don't want to ruin them either. But now I think I might ramp all that up a little bit and start collecting tools a bit faster. I've been binge watching all of these watch repair tutorial videos, and think I'll probably start practicing and learning and experimenting sooner rather than later. Because I would really like to be able to, instead of just throw away watches that aren't really worth servicing, paying for a full service, when they start performing really poorly, like my Paliots and watches like that, it would be cool if I could take those movements apart, clean them, put them back together, oil them, regulate them. If there are any significant issues or broken things, damage, stuff like that that I can't handle, then potentially send it off and let the pros handle that. But it would be nice to shorten the list of watches that need servicing, because some of the cheaper ones that don't have water resistance, really, I can try and do that myself maybe. Of course, watches like dive watches or my Everests, those are going out for servicing regardless because they have decent water resistance, and I just don't even want to risk anything with pieces like that. But yeah, I mean, if I was a car guy, it would be a good idea if I could actually work on cars. I would have a collection of cars that I've got to constantly send to the shop and pay a ton of money to have fixed, when really, I should be learning how to deal with that myself, right? I mean, I'm a car guy. So I feel like similarly with watches, there should at least be some things, and maybe increasing numbers of things that I can take care of on my own, even with my mechanical watches. But we'll see. I'm probably going to end up keeping the Orion. In fact, that is what I'm wearing tonight. And we'll see how long it stays on my wrist. I mean, it is a brilliant watch. I just don't wear it. But we'll see if this is kind of giving it a second chance at life in my collection. And it definitely seems like I'm probably going to have it serviced sooner than I had anticipated. Oh yes, and another thing that had me nervous when this whole Nomos thing came up, because everything was kind of hitting all at once. As I was getting concerned about my other mechanical watches, I happened to stumble upon a Federico video where he was talking about crazy turnaround times in watch repair jobs. So what he's encountering with his business is when he has to send watches off to the brands themselves. Like if he has an Omega, super simple, like hand winding watch, nothing complicated, and he has to send it off to Omega to have it repaired because he's had to kind of scale down and just do warranty work as far as repairs go, or initial servicing when pieces come into his company. The turnaround time for sending off to Omega was just crazy. I think he had said it was 6 months to a year or something like that. I mean, just huge turnaround times, because there's a growing demand for this stuff as more and more people are getting into mechanical watches. The number of movements that need servicing are just overwhelming the few watchmakers that are out there, especially in the US. So yeah, that just kind of added to my nervousness. But I think I'm going to send off a message to TikTok Watch Repairs. We'll see how much it'll be to do a servicing on the Nomos, if they are able to service Nomos watches. I don't recall if that's on their list of brands that they deal with. We'll find out. But maybe a general servicing on this watch won't be too horrible. And being newer, maybe nothing is damaged or anything like that, I would assume. So yeah, we'll see. I'll have to give you an update if I do reach out to them and decide to get this thing serviced. And once it is serviced, who knows? We'll see if it ends up staying in the collection or finding a home where it will be loved more than it's been in my collection. Thanks for watching.